Welcome back to another episode of Lost Codex Legends. My name is Jesse, and it's been a few days. I've been playing Classic. Have you been playing Classic? How's everyone enjoying Classic? Do we all feel like we're young kids again? 14? I feel like I'm 14. Aged 14 years with the login times. We're not going to talk about Classic. But today we're talking about Thrall again. And the reason why we're not doing Thrall's story in one big long video, you know I can talk for 2 hours. I know you guys want to listen for 2 hours. But YouTube doesn't like that format. That doesn't tickle YouTube's interest in terms of their preferred content. And so in order to keep things fresh and engaging while not rambling in a 2.5 hour long podcast format, we're going to break it into segments. So Thrall's story today will cover Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, and the beginning of Cataclysm, the Shattering events. This is to create a sort of episodic feel for these larger characters with massive storylines, and it allows us to break up certain parts of their story. If you want to watch a full long 2 hour Thrall video, we'll just wait till part 4 is at part 5. Who knows how many parts it's going to have. Once that's out, then just binge watch them all together, and there you go. There's your format. Everyone's happy. Without further ado, let us begin with Thrall's story in Burning Crusade. It is the year 25, and Thrall has now entered negotiations with the Blood Elves. Sylvanas has recommended to Thrall and the other leaders that maybe it's time to talk to these elves. And while Thrall is a little bit unsure about their use of fell magic in response to their addiction and everything that's happened to them, there is strategic value in bringing the Blood Elves into the Horde. Now, although the Elves of Silvermoon have had conflicts with the Horde in the past, specifically the Old Horde, their recent incursions against the Scourge and the massive devastation they've faced the Elves have shown their courage and their resolve to defend their homelands. Because the relations between Quel'Thalas and the Alliance were soured when Kael'thas joined Illidan and Lady Vashj, the Elves need allies, and Thrall sees this as an opportunity, not only to grow the Horde and to add to their ranks and to bolster the faction that he is building, but also as a chance to show compassion and honor, because the Blood Elves, newly named Blood Elves, have suffered a lot with their magical addiction, the massive devastation that they lost to the Scourge, and the destruction when Arthas went to town. All of that, this is a chance for Thrall, and specifically Cairne's mentioned in Chronicle as well, to help these elves find peace. And so the Blood Elves join the Horde, and the Horde gains another stronghold on the Eastern Kingdoms. At this time, as demons have started to pour from the Dark Portal and making everyone uneasy and realizing that the portal to Outland is now reopened, Thrall receives word from the player, a letter from Nagrand delivered by the player, about his people in Outland. And Eitrig is with him at the time, and he's really caught up in the moment. He's like, oh my god, my people, the uncorrupted orcs who did not succumb to the demon's blood of the old Horde, have been there the whole time? What? And he's really excited, but also, like, that's an emotional moment for him. And he's like, we gotta go now! And Eitrig's like, yo, dude, like, you gotta leave someone in charge. You gotta, like, prepare and leave Orgrimmar. You can't just leave the city. You're kind of the Warchief. And he's like, oh, right, fine. Now, it's not really explained if Thrall is among the initial several groups that go to Outland. Of course, the Horde arrives, and they see the Alliance as honor hold, so they build Thrallmar. But before they can do anything, the Horde attacks Hellfire Citadel, and the Horde is actually responsible for taking out Kargath Bladefist directly. After their victory in Hellfire Peninsula, the Horde, along with Thrall, ride to Garadar in Nagrand, named after his late grandfather, Garrod. Here, Thrall finds his last remaining family member, his grandmother Gaia, who is terribly old at this point. Like, she's old. Like, Drekthar's old, she's old. And she reveals to Thrall that his birth name is Goel. And there's a really, really tender moment between grandmother and grandson here. And it's one of those moments that I would have loved to have seen in cinematic form. Thrall, can you imagine, like, modern day, I'm not talking like Starfang HD cinema, I mean, that'd be cool too. I'm talking like in-game Thrall model, you know, seeing his grandmother for the first time and seeing this old, ancient shaman, Gaia, who is the leader of these, or who is the rather spiritual leader of these orcs. And that first encounter between Thrall learning who he is, learning about Goel and his parents, and his grandmother. While in Garadar, Thrall meets the infamous son of Grommash Hellscream, the one and only Garrosh Hellscream. Now, Garrosh is actually the leader of this village. He's in charge, but he's kind of mopey. He's kind of glummed out, and some of the orcs kind of make comment like, he's just bummed. He views his father as a monster. All he knows is stories that Grom Hellscream drank the blood first, which it's not stories, that's fact. He thinks that his father's the one that led his people to damnation, and I guess he did lead them to damnation by being the first one to drink, but it was Blackhand and Gul'dan who was in charge, but he doesn't know that. He just thinks that his dad was a complete and total asshole. And Grom had his moments. But when Thrall's here, Thrall shows him a vision. Thrall shows him a depiction of what happened between Grom, Manaroth, and Thrall, and he shows Grom's final moments of defying Manaroth and sinking Gorehowl into his chest and killing the demon, freeing the orcs from the blood curse, and dying with that final kill as his last redeeming act. And Garrosh is shown that his father really was a hero. While Grom had many faults, Grom did many things wrong, in the end, Grom died a hero, and after this, Thrall manages to convince Garrosh to come back to Azeroth and serve as one of his advisors, alongside Rhaegar and Eitrig and all these other orcs, and he really wants Garrosh to become a part of the Horde. And so the events of Burning Crusade happen. Thrall really doesn't do anything for the rest of the expansion. It's because we players do everything. And after he returns from Outland, at some point, there's a scene in the comics between Rhaegar and Garrosh, and there are some blatantly opposite thoughts going on here. It's funny because Rhaegar used to be, a slave master, but he's really come a long way. He's encouraging diplomacy. He's like, man, we gotta talk with these guys. We can work together. While Garrosh is like, screw that. Let's just beat them up. And Garrosh really doesn't know anything about the Alliance. I'm sure that Thrall has explained to him who they are, but I'm sure Garrosh has also gotten, they imprisoned our people. We were, gotten the orcish side of things. We were trying to flee from a dying world. We needed a new home. We wanted to settle here. And then they, we went to war with them and they imprisoned us. And then he hears what they did to the, what they did to the elves. And he hears that they hate trolls, and probably hears they have cows on farms, and the Tauren are offended because of that. And he's just like, man, screw these guys. And so Garrosh hates the Alliance really with no explanation. Garrosh is trying to prove himself. Now that Dad's not a dick, Garrosh is like, okay, well now I can be a dick. And so there's some disagreements between. There's actually like a screaming match going on between Rhaegar, because that's how orcs talk. There's no such thing as diplomacy. It's whoever can yell louder wins. That's how orc diplomats work. In case you didn't know, that's fact. Now Jaina, who is an advisor to King Varian, feels the same way as Rhaegar. Obviously, she's like, you know what? Despite the fact that Dad's dead and everything bad happened, we've done a lot of good together, and we can definitely work together. And she calls Thrall into a meeting. And now that Varian's back, and there's not some creepy black dragon running Stormwind, things can be made more official. There can be an official treaty signed between the Horde and the Alliance now that this whole Burning Crusade crap is over. Thrall obviously agrees with Jaina and Rhaegar, and a peace summit is called in Theramore, where everyone and their grandmother, except Gaia, she wasn't invited, is invited to Theramore. Despite him agreeing with this peace summit, Thrall is a little bit uneasy because he feels that the city of Orgrimmar, the people of the Horde, are as divided as his advisors are. Some of them are like, yeah, you know what, we can do this. And other of them are like, screw the Alliance, and just, it's other ones, half of them are PvPers, the other ones are normal servers, and it's just not good at all. He speaks to his advisors, and because Rhaegar's pro-peace, invites both of them to the summit, feels that Garrosh's mind can be changed. Thrall doesn't know Garrosh very well at this point. They travel by Zeppelin to Theramore, and things actually go quite well. There's some trade talk, everything going on. I think that Garrosh meets Anduin for the first time, and everything's going well, and there's a little bit of awkward tensions when Rhaegar's there with Valyra and Varian, but it's like, hey, old buddy. But everything goes well, until it doesn't. Varian has to leave really fast because Goldshire and South Shore are under attack by the Scourge. And yeah, just Scourge are randomly attacking. What? This is very sudden. Things are suddenly going south very fast. South Shore, get it? No. And just as he goes to leave, the Twilight's Hammer decides to ruin everyone's day, as they do. Now, the Twilight's Hammer is a cult, a former orc clan, now run by Cho'Gall, and they have a whole mixture of races from across Azeroth to ruin everyone's day in the name of the old gods. And they're pretty smart in this attack. What they do is they have varying races of Horde races and Alliance races in this attack, and they get them to attack the opposite faction. So the gnomes and the human members of the cultists attack only the Horde members who are in Theramore, while the orcs and trolls and whoever in the cults attack only the Alliance members at Theramore. This makes it seem that it is not a random group of crazies attacking, but rather a strategic ambush by the opposite faction during this peace summit, and all hell breaks loose. A massive battle occurs in Theramore. At this point, Medan shows up, and this is where we kind of raise our brows and go, how much of this is actually real? It's worth mentioning Medan here because Garrona's also involved, Medan's mother. Varian catches sight of Garrona during this attack and automatically assumes Thrall has sent her to kill him, just as Garrona killed his own father back during the First War. Medan is here to protect his mother, and as a result, the Twilight see him as a target, and he ends up getting kidnapped. Whether or not this whole scene or Medan is canon, the attack is canon. Medan's presence, it's unclear. Alternatively, if that's not canon, then the cultist casualties are simply really high, and they all lost, rather than fleeing with Medan as a prisoner. Garrosh accuses the Alliance of orchestrating this attack, while Varian accuses the Horde. Thrall and Rhaegar and Valyria, everyone tries to calm these two down, but the damage is done. The cultists have done their jobs, there's bodies of the opposite faction on both sides, and they're not exactly wearing "I joined the Twilight cult and got this shitty shirt. It's all very ambiguous, and so everyone leaves on high tensions and nothing is well. Jaina and Thrall say farewell, and they're obviously disappointed that this attack occurred, and any chance at peace was kind of ruined at this point. Now, after this summit, Thrall returns home and finds that the Scourge is not just attacking South Shore and Goldshire, but the entire world, and Orgrimmar is a target. A massive new plague has been launched, which is rapidly turning civilians and citizens and heroes of all kind into undead monsters. We players experience that in the Wrath of the Lich King pre-event. And so work is set in motion to figure out a cure for this, like something needs to be done. A forsaken apothecary by the name of Putress manages to find a cure and saves the day for everyone, but Thrall realizes that more must be done here. This attack wasn't just random, this wasn't just a random skirmish, something is going on here. Now, Thrall decides he's going to play it safe. He's going to play it cautious. He's going to send some scouts to Northrend. He's also going to meet with Jaina to find out what the Alliance are doing about it. Garrosh says, to hell with that. We need to crush the Alliance first, then deal with the Scourge. The Alliance, they're clearly the bad guys here. And Thrall's like, man, like, really? You have no reason to hate them. Like, why are you so angry? And Garrosh just screams. And so Thrall's a little bit pissed. Thrall, being a little bit annoyed, decides to punish Garrosh for his impudence and makes a comment about Garrosh's father, thus provoking Garrosh to challenge him to Mak-Gorah. The two go to the arena and have a very casual Mak-Gorah, armors on, weapons in hand. It's in the middle of this fight, in the middle of this Mak-Gorah, that the Scourge show up and ruin everyone's day. They pull a page from the Twilight's Hammer book, and Thrall says, okay, we need to stop this duel. We're going to deal with this later, but the Scourge is here, and that's kind of a bigger threat. And so the two leave the arena, and just as the city's attacked, and all the big names are there in force. We've got Garrosh, we've got Rhaegar, Saurfang, Sylvanas, us, the adventurers. After the attack, it's made clear to Thrall that the time for caution is over. We need to act as quick as possible. Garrosh wants to go to Northrend, and Thrall actually allows it. He says, alright, you're eager, you want to go? Fine. You're going to lead the offensive into Northrend. And so he promotes Garrosh to leader of the Warsong offensive up in Northrend. Saurfang joins him, and the Horde prepares for war. The war in Northrend leads to the devastating Wrathgate incident. Turns out the great hero, Grand Apothecary Putress, wasn't a hero at all. He was a total asshat. And a rogue organization of Forsaken decide to launch a new plague on both Alliance and Horde forces at the Wrathgate when the Lich King was drawn out of hiding, killing massive casualties on both sides.
Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Behold now the terrible vengeance of the Forsaken! Sylvanas. Death to the Scourge! And death to the living!
After this, Grand Apothecary Putris and his loyalists, alongside Varimathras, take the Undercity from Sylvanas. There is a coup and an attempted assassination on her life, but she manages to escape and return to Thrall. Varian obviously blames Thrall and the rest of the Horde for this act of betrayal. There could be witnesses that heard Putris yell, "Behold the terrible vengeance of the Forsaken," and thus he's preparing for war. Varian is preparing for war, but doesn't realize that Thrall is also preparing for war. Thrall is going to retake the Undercity with Sylvanas' help. She is without a home. Many of her people have suffered because of this. And this Horde died at the Wrathgate as well. It wasn't just the Alliance. And this is personal for Thrall now. This is bad for the Horde. There are people who still think that, can the Forsaken truly be trusted? If these ones betrayed, how can we trust the rest of them? Jaina manages to convince Varian that this is not the time to attack the Horde, but the time to retake the Undercity as well, to help the Horde, I guess. Though it could be that Varian is going to reclaim it for the Alliance. Thrall and Sylvanas enter the city with fellow heroes and other characters, and they find enemy Forsaken and demons everywhere. They could have gone for Putris, but instead they go for Varimathras. Varimathras has been an advisor to Sylvanas these last few years while she's been a part of the Horde, and he was the one who fully orchestrated this coup. He was the one who allied with Putris, or Putris allied with him, but this was a betrayal. The Alliance goes after Putris, while the Horde goes after Varimathras, and it is during this attack to bring down Putris that Varian sees the horrible things that happen in the Undercity. And this isn't just because of the rebels, this is just how the Undercity is. The horrible experiments and everything, all the grotesque stuff going on down there with the chopped up bodies and the mutilated corpses and the experiments. And he says, the Horde allows this? The Horde allows this and the Wrathgate to happen? There can never be peace. And so Varian decides, enough is enough. This is coming to an end right now. The two factions encounter each other in the throne room, Sylvanas' throne room specifically, and they're about to duke it out, but Jaina decides to teleport everyone to safety, specifically the Alliance, and she's obviously very sorrowful that things couldn't have gone better. But things end in the battle for Undercity, the first battle for Undercity, not in the Alliance and Horde's favor in terms of peace. Thrall is obviously regretful and upset at this broken peace and the fact that the Horde had this grand betrayal from within, but Saurfang reminds him that he has a faction and his people to lead first and foremost. The Wrathgate causes further drama when the Alliance and Horde are called to Dalaran to deal with the Ulduar scenario with Yogg-Saron, and this causes Varian and Garrosh to duke it out, and Thrall tries to stop them. Tensions are high, both factions hate each other, the Alliance thinks the Horde is responsible, the Horde is clearly trying to say, we suffered too. Thrall is dealing with a very shaky, shattered faction right now. There's even more tension that rises at the grand tournament hosted by the Argent Crusade. Tyrion Fordring invites both Thrall and Garrosh to attend, and with Varian present and Jaina present, tensions are high. Horde and Alliance soldiers jump in the arena to beat the crap out of each other. Thrall tries to stop things, but it doesn't go well. This is not the right time to talk about peace with so many dead at the Wrathgate event. Now, the rest of the Northrend campaign goes on as we know. Lich King dies, spoiler, and everything goes back to normal. The Horde and Alliance decide to go back to their factions and celebrate their win. When Garrosh and his soldiers return home from Northrend, Thrall holds a great big banquet in honor of the Young Orc's victory. This is Garrosh's first victory. Garrosh has successfully led the campaign. Obviously, there were some devastating losses with the Wrathgate, but in terms of the entire campaign, it was seen as a tremendous Horde victory. The Alliance had their own victory, but the Horde came back feeling, we did pretty good. That was awesome. And Thrall, who wasn't in Northrend for all of the major events, because it was Garrosh's campaign, gives him a great big old feast and a big celebration. He actually gives him his father's axe. I guess Thrall went to Karazhan to take it from Prince Malchezaar. We don't know where he got the axe from. We don't know why Prince Malchezaar had the axe. Probably not canon. But gives Garrosh the axe, as we can see in this picture, from the Shattering, which is a pretty big moment for Garrosh, because Gorehowl was just as famous as its wielder, as Garrosh's father, and now he has passed it on, he being Thrall, down to the son of Hellscream. During the celebration, there are massive bonfires to be lit in celebration of the Horde's victory. Everything's going well. And because of this, a small accident with the bonfire causes the flames to start spreading wildly. Things get out of hand. Thrall tries to calm the elements, the fire, with his shamanistic diplomacy, but it doesn't go well. The flames are too voracious and too hostile, and he's forced to basically force them into submission, which he doesn't like doing. That's not the job of a shaman. A shaman is supposed to ask for help. A shaman is one of the most powerful classes, lore-wise. But the elements are temperamental dicks, and they could just say, no, you know what? We're not helping you today. It's a bad day for us. And you don't have anything. So, Thrall being a gladiator has his backup spec. But Thrall says, hey, guys, can you stop burning my city? It's made of wood. I don't really appreciate that. And he's forced to force them to stop, which he doesn't like doing. It's at this point that Thrall is convinced that there's something very wrong with the elements. He's starting to feel a little bit, I don't like this feeling. When Drekthar declares him a shaman years ago, he's feeling proud. He's like, hell yeah, this is wicked. I got some new powers. And now he's like, no, I don't like this. There's something going on here. And there definitely is something going on. It's at this point that there are suddenly some extremely vicious and hostile attacks from the Horde against the Alliance. A group of sentinels who are escorting a caravan of herbs and ore and all sorts of stuff, lumber, were not only ambushed and brutally murdered, dismembered, they were skinned, and it wasn't clear if they were skinned alive or after they were killed. Their skin was then hung on nearby trees, and Horde symbols were drawn in elven blood on the skins. Just a traditional Robin Hood scenario where they stick notes into trees with paper, but the Horde doesn't have paper, so they use night elf skins, because that's completely normal. News obviously reaches Varian, and Varian is mad, to put it extremely lightly. Varian sends a letter back to Thrall and has a list of demands. He demands that Thrall formally, pings everyone on the Discord server to apologize. He wants a big, huge public apology. He wants him to reaffirm the dedication to the peace treaty that kind of exists but doesn't exist between the Alliance and Horde. It's still shaky from the Wrathgate, but there's supposed to be a damn peace summit. There's supposed to be a damn peace between the Alliance and Horde, and everything keeps happening and everything keeps getting ruined. And Varian's like, are you kidding me right now? First the Wrathgate, now you're skinning elves? Come on, guys, what are you doing? So he wants them to reaffirm his dedication to this peace treaty publicly. He wants them to denounce what happened, the brutal, terrible actions of what the orcs in the Horde did to these night elves, and he wants those held responsible to be handed over to the Alliance, where they will face the King's justice. And Thrall is very, very conflicted. But why is Thrall conflicted? You might be saying, what do you mean he's conflicted? Let me explain Orcish politics here. Now, Thrall is in a tense situation here, because he's obviously appalled and horrified at this act of terrible violence. But it's a little bit more than that for the people of Orgrimmar. See, the people of Orgrimmar are suffering right now. They have no clean water. They have not a whole hell of a lot of food. Many of them are homeless. The cost of war has been massive. They settled in a desert, which, Thrall, that's your fault. Things are tense right now. And the people of Ashenvale, a land filled with resources and desperate goods that the people of Orgrimmar need, well, those trade routes are closed off. And so by closing off the trade routes, Thrall says someone somewhere saw this denial of the basic foundations, food, water, shelter, to our orc children. Someone saw the denial of that and acted in extreme, excessive violence. And Thrall says, if I speak out against that, that creates a problem. Thrall says, closed trade routes permit children to starve, to be exposed to the elements, to get sick. The logic is something I can follow. Because the trade routes were closed, orc children are suffering. And because orc children are suffering, someone out there, someone too violent, acted out in a Robin Hood style way, steal from the rich, but added the whole skinning part in there. And because of this, Thrall says, I can't give in to Varian's demands. I can't do any of those things. He definitely isn't going to hand over one of his own orc criminals, horde criminals, to the Alliance to face King Varian's justice. Thrall wants to find out who did it. He wants to find out who did this and deal his own justice. Thrall will not hand over one of his own to the enemy faction for something that is started to gain popularity. Not the fact that they were skinned, but the fact that supplies were taken from a group of people who refuse to do trade. By refusing to do trade, children are suffering, and the children of the Horde are suffering. Someone acted out in vengeance to gain the supply, to do whatever they needed for the Horde, and that, Thrall knows, is a shaky foundation. Jaina's a little bit shocked. Jaina's like, really? Like, you can't speak out against us? And in the end, Thrall agrees, alright, I will denounce the fact that the treaty was broken. I will speak out that we will not accept the fact that the laws were broken. This is unacceptable. But he goes, I will not denounce what was done, why it was done, and I will not return the supplies that were taken. He goes, I can't do that. And Thrall is in a really tough situation here. Again, it's important not to see Thrall as someone who's sympathizing with a bunch of elf skinners. He's not doing that, but the rumor is, it's starting to spread, that because the children are suffering, someone acted out in violence, and Thrall is in a really unfortunate Horde PR situation right here that isn't going to work in his favor. Now, because Thrall refuses to hand over the offenders and denounce the attacks themselves, he denounces the fact and says, we broke this treaty and that is wrong and that is a mistake, but he doesn't denounce the attack itself. This causes some political rift between the Alliance and Horde, obviously, and Alliance leaders are even less trusting of Thrall. From the Alliance's perspective and the leaders of the Alliance, elves were skinned alive or dead in an ambush. Things were stolen, and the leader of this peaceful Horde refuses to denounce that. That's a problem. For the Horde's perspective, they see it as a victim situation. They're the ones suffering. Of course, this whole political strife is the entire purpose of this attack. Because it wasn't Horde soldiers who skinned the Night Elves and wrote Horde symbols on them. It wasn't them. It was the Twilight's Hammer. Again, the Twilight's Hammer Kool-Aid mans their way into the conversation, into the story, and ruins everyone's day, but very, very discreetly. I guess it's not really Kool-Aid Man in any way. And they do it so sneakily that it is believed to this day that it was the Horde that did this, that it was the Horde that skinned the Night Elves. That plotline is never fully resolved. In fact, the Twilight's Hammer involvement was so discreet that myself and my mods had a hard time finding that one piece of dialogue that confirmed that it was the Twilight's Hammer. It was up in the air. It sounded like the Twilight's Hammer, but we didn't have any proof. There was a single line in the Shattering that confirms it was them. And it took us a while to find it. It was actually, there could have been some angry orcs. It's not out of the realm of possibility that a really angry, aggressive, bone chewer orc veteran decided to go ham on a bunch of Night Elves. Orcs are vicious, temperamental creatures. And it could have been just one asshole orc in the Horde who took out his anger on the Night Elves. That's a possibility. Thrall knows it's a possibility. Varian assumes all orcs are capable of that. But in reality, it wasn't. It was a bunch of crazy cultists who did this. And they obviously did it with the intention to cause more problems. After a conversation with Jaina and Eitrig, Thrall decides he's got to go back to Nagrand. He has to go back to Outland and talk to the elements that were there. He thinks that because of the destruction of Draenor and all the upheaval that happened, he can get some answers. If he can talk to the elements of Outland, he can maybe get some answers on why the elements of Azeroth are not really responding to him, why they're so vicious lately. Before he leaves, Eitrig tells him, basically, I'm not going to read what the note says, but basically that you need a mate and you need to have a child. You're the Warchief who's gonna take over after you leave. And Thrall says, I don't have time for that. I'm going to go save the Horde and save the world. Not now, Eitrig. And so off he goes to Nagrand to talk to Grandma. Now, before Thrall runs off to Grandma, Eitrig makes a good point. He needs to put someone in charge of the Horde. And right now, Garrosh is Mr. Popular. Garrosh has just, except with Vol'jin, Garrosh has just won the Northrend campaign. Everyone is like, yeah, this guy. This guy is like old school Loktar Ogar. He's not green skin. He's the son of Grom Hellscream. Everything about Garrosh is rockstar celebrity. And it was a victory despite the Wrathgate up in Northrend. And everyone likes him. Except for those who are kind of, wanting to not fight and kill the Alliance. So, Cairne kind of hims and haws about him. Eitrig's like, really, man? And, of course, Vol'jin and Garrosh have their thing. Thrall says, I need a temporary leader, and decides Garrosh is the perfect choice for his temporary leader of the Horde. And says, hey, do you mind watching the Horde while I'm gone? Listen to Cairne, listen to Eitrig. They're your friends. I'm going to go see Grandma. And so off he goes to Nagrand, and while he's there, he's told to seek the help from an orc named Agra. And Agra doesn't like Thrall at all. Agra didn't watch the first video that I made, and she just doesn't really like him at all. And she dutifully helps him on his vision quest. She's a shaman first. She's like, man, I don't like you, but we're just gonna do this, and off we go to talk to your elemental buddies and figure this out. And Thrall wants to solidify his connection with the elements. And so there he finds the Furies of Outland and the elemental leaders of Outland. And he talks to Gordog, the Fury of Earth. What a name. Gordog. Too epic. Thrall asks Gordog, hey man, do you know what's going on with the elements of Azeroth? And Gordog says, dude, I don't know your elements. Don't assume I know your elements. And Thrall says, that's a good point. And gives him a rock to eat. Says, here, eat this. Which is normal for elementals, apparently. And Gordog eats it and goes, oh, I get it. Your elementals are afraid. They're distressed and panicked, for they have foreseen something. They've foreseen a cataclysmic event that is going to happen, will happen, maybe happen. And Gordog kind of relates it to the massive event that happened that shattered Outland. Thrall says, oh my god, we need to go and fix this. We got to stop this from happening. This is definitely going to go wrong. And before they leave, Agra says, hey, I kind of actually don't hate you, and I kind of care for you, so I'd like to come with you to Azeroth. And Thrall's like, alright, we can do that. Yeah, you can come with me. And so, right as they're about to leave, a Tauren shows up, Perith Stormhoof, a messenger sent by Bane, and tells Thrall, by the way, since you've been gone, Cairne Bloodhoof is dead. Garrosh has killed him in a duel. Thunderbluff was taken over by Grimtotem, and lots of Tauren civilians were murdered. Bane almost died. Bane successfully retook Thunderbluff with the help of Gazlowe from Ratchet and banished Magatha Grimtotem out of the Horde, and Bane and Garrosh are now just glaring at each other because of some reason. Thrall is completely and utterly mortified. When he left Azeroth, the Horde was mostly intact. There was the ambush by the Horde, orchestrated by the Twilight's Hammer, but aside from that, everything was okay. The elements were up in arms, but the Horde was okay. And during this time, when Thrall's gone, there's another Twilight's Hammer ambush, this time on both Tauren and Night Elves. The only survivor of the attack was Hamul Runetotem, who warns Cairne about the attack. And Cairne, thinking that Garrosh's aggressive hatred towards the Alliance has encouraged some orcs to do some terrible things, denounces him as Warchief and challenges him to Mak Gorah. Without going into the details of it, Garrosh's axe is poisoned, unknowing to Garrosh, by Magatha Grimtotem, who despises Cairne. And during the Mak Gorah, this time Cairne has the upper hand. During the Mak Gorah with Thrall, Garrosh had the upper hand, but this time Cairne was winning. And Garrosh manages to get a little nick on Cairne's arm, paralyzing Cairne, and Garrosh deals the killing blow. Afterwards, Thunderbluff is ambushed and all this stuff happens, all during Thrall's absence. He immediately returns to Azeroth with Agra. Thrall is present before Cairne's funeral-adorned body, wrapped in colors of the Earth Mother, brown and green. And Thrall is standing there in the Doomplate armor before his old friend's body. And he asks if Cairne is still there, if Cairne is there in spirit, and there is no reply. And Thrall is reflecting by himself in those moments next to Cairne's body, and this is when he sheds the Doomplate. This is when he takes off the armor, the black and gold armor of Orgrim Doomhammer, and sheds it off. The armor represents Thrall's role as Warchief in the Horde. And if he is to help the elements of Azeroth, if he is to help find peace for them, and ultimately help the Horde in the meantime, he cannot do so as Warchief. And so it is in this moment that he sheds the armor of Orgrim Doomhammer, takes off the shoulders, takes off his chest plate and his belt, pulls out a brown robe from his pack, just a traditional shamanistic robe, and some prayer beads around his neck. And as he's standing before Cairne's body, he notices some pieces of wood across Cairne's chest. These are pieces of Cairne's rune spear, the weapon that he wielded in his Mak'gora against Garrosh that was completely shattered by Gorehowl. On the funeral pyre, Thrall picks up a small piece off Cairne's chest and turns it around, and the rune that's on it is the rune of healing. And Thrall keeps that piece for himself and departs from Cairne's body one last time. Shortly after this, the Shattering happens. The whole world explodes. Everything goes to hell. Water, tidal waves, cracks in the earth, fire, magma, scary dragons. Everything happens. And Thrall feels all of this. All of this is coming from a wound in the world, the Maelstrom. And Thrall decides he has to go to the Maelstrom. He has to go and do something. And that is where we're going to leave today's story about Thrall. With Thrall going to the Maelstrom, leaving the Horde behind, leaving Garrosh in charge, while he goes to try and quell and calm and heal the elements of Azeroth in the wake of this terrible event called the Cataclysm. In the next episode, we will talk about Thrall's role all through Cataclysm, a major storyline. We'll go into Mists of Pandaria and beyond. I don't know if it's going to end in part 3 or part 4. We'll find out when we get to the notes on that part. Let me know what you guys think of this episodic version. I know some of you are going to write, Jesse, just talk for an hour and a half. I'd love to see you do that. And I appreciate that. And you know I can do that. That's more of a podcast format. Try to understand that in order for us to make use of these frequently uploaded videos per week, Lost Codex Legends episodes, we can't have them go that long into the hour mark. There is a time limit. And although I don't always hit the time limit that I want to, I am trying. And thus, I'm not going to talk for 2 hours about Thrall. We will come back to part 3. But let me know what you guys think of these episodic versions. Do you like the flow of them, where I've been stopping with them? And of course, anything I can improve on, what you'd like to see more of. And with that, guys, we are done for this week for Lost Codex Legends. We will see you next week with another episode featuring someone. But until then, guys, enjoy Classic, enjoy Battle for Azeroth, play WoW in its full entirety. Play both. Play both. They both make the game great. World of Warcraft is amazing. You're all amazing. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.